From Anshe Sfard Beth El Emeth Congregation, it's time to take 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion of Vayakhel-Pekudei, the Fire of Torah. If we look at the very last words of the Parsha, which are the last words of Shemot, of Exodus, it says, Ki anan Hashem al mishkan yomam, for the cloud of glory of God is on the tabernacle during the day, ve'esh, and a fire, tiyeh laila bo, will be there at night. Leinei kol beit Yisrael b'chol masehem, and to the eyes of all the Jews in all of their travels. And those are the last words. As Ramban describes, the Jews became the Jews. They became similar to the level of Abraham, that God could rest with the Jews as God rested with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who were chariots of God, who were repositories of divine presence. Comes the Rambam's son, Rabbi Avraham ben HaRambam, and he says, a fire? There was a fire at Sinai, big fire going on there. Ish HaGdolah, the big fire. The Jews were scared of the fire. There was a fire at the burning bush, also at Sinai, before Mount Sinai happened. And here's a fire that was with them in all their travels. Comes the Rambam's son, and he says, this fire is not part of the elements of fire, the medieval elements of part of the different four parts of the world. It's not part of that. It's not composed of any elements. It's like fire, but it's not really fire. As he says, I'll prove it to you. Because it says, there was something that looked like fire. There are other verses where it says, Kimar Eish. It looked like the look of fire, but it wasn't really fire. So what is it? It's some sort of a mystery and it explains why when the burning bush took place, it didn't burn. You always wonder since you're a child, why didn't the burning bush burn? So we never really answer the question. The Rambam's son says it's simple. If it was fire, it would burn. God created the world. If it's real fire, fire burns. However, it wasn't real fire. It was a special kind of fire. What kind of fire is this? What kind of fire is it? So if you look in the Ramban, it talks about Mimino Eish Dat Lamo. God gave the Torah to Israel. It says at the end of the Torah, in Parshas Zos HaBracha, that Mimino Eish Dat Lamo, that as God gave us the Torah, came around to the world to give the different nations, on his right hand, so to speak, there was a fiery Torah, Eish Dat. It's one word, Eish Dat, the fire of Torah. So the Ramban says, what do you mean fire? So he says, when the Jews were going to receive the Torah, he tried to give the Torah to other nations. And what happened? He gave it to them with his right side, mystical meaning, and with the light of his face. Again, God has no face, he has no light. But there's an image of God lighting up the Jews, that giving us the Torah with the light of his face. We say it every day in Nitzim Shalom, in the last bracha of Shemon Esrei. With the light of your face, you gave us the Torah. So you know what the fire was? It was the light of God. It was God shining his face on us. The Alshech says that he was a great mystic from Tzvat, and he says there's something very spiritual going on here. That when you think about the Torah has some kind of fire. He says, let me give you an example. The Gemara in Tanya, in Chagiga, talks about the rabbi was explaining something very holy in Chezkel about the chariots of God, the presence of God, and then there was a fire all around him. And Ben Azai was teaching, and Rabbi Akiva said, he says, you must have been talking about the chariots of God. Because when this fire is it's the face of God, it's the light of God, so to speak, and God has no image, but the light of God that comes to us, and that light, that's the Eish, that's the fire that Moshe saw in the Sinai, in the burning bush. That's the fire the Jews saw at Mount Sinai. It was the Or Panecha, it was the light of God's Torah. And that explains another Gemara. The Gemara in Tainis 4a. What happened? Rava says, this Talmud scholar, especially young man, the Ratach, if he gets really mad and he's all on fire, his smoke is coming out of his ears, Oraizo derasach, It's the Torah inside of him that's burning. It's fiery. What does that mean? After all, it says in Yirmiyah, "Alo kol dvarai ke'esh num Hashem." My words are like fire, not regular fire. Regular fire burns. It's a special fire that's the face of God, meaning the light of God. When we learn Torah, hopefully it lights up our face. It lights us up to be the potential of who we could be. And that is the light of Torah. The Eish HaTorah is not some kind of fire. Eish HaTorah is nothing less than the gracious light, the enlightenment that God gives to someone who is inspired through Torah, and then it burns within you. And sometimes you experience it as a rabbi or a scholar is so on fire. He's a fiery kind of a person. It's not fire. It's the fire of Torah. Or when God lit up the way for us, when he sort of smiled at us and he said, the Jews, and he smiled at us with that or panecha, with that grace, by saying, I love you. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, his children, I love you. That lighting up his face, that smiling at us, that's where he gave us the Torah's Chaim. Or put another way, when he gave us the Torah's Chaim, when he gave us the Torah and he told us don't do this and do that, like a mother, like a father who tells a child, do this, don't do that because I care about you. When he gave us that light, that was a fire. What kind of fire? It was the light of God's face. It was like, if someone smiles at you, you feel like, oh, his whole face lit up. And it was, God has no face, but we felt that smile of God on us. And when you have that smile, when you have that grace from God, that's the fire. That's the fire the Jews saw at Mount Sinai. But it doesn't burn. It doesn't burn the sneh. As it marches through the desert, it doesn't make the Jews hot in the desert. It's not fire. It's the light of the face of God, which means it's God smiling on us. Thank you for joining us here at the Untitled Chapter congregation for discussion of the Parsha and the various holidays. Thank you, Jason Lefkowitz, our producer, and join us again next time.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein. To learn more, visit asb.org.